Welcome back, everybody, to these little talks on life after death. Since I last spoke, I've been in hospital, actually. I've had an operation. I was in hospital for 2 weeks. Before I went in, I was hoping for a near-death experience, but I never had one. But I did meet people in hospital there who've gone through tremendous amount of suffering, and it would be very instructive to give a lot of thought about why we suffer in this life, and perhaps in another series of talks we can go into that more deeply. But we were saying in the last session that near-death experiences are becoming known through interviews of researchers that are looking into the people that have had these experiences, and they're finding that they have a fairly common experience. Now, this is unusual to have so many different people from around the world, from all different cultures and backgrounds, are explaining virtually the same experience. Surely there's something to think about there with regards to the possibility of having a soul and not just this physical body, that we have a human spirit which will go on when this body passes away. Some years ago, my wife Rita, she was listening to the radio. Somebody was being interviewed about an event which was quite astounding, actually. This was an event spoken of by a man who was in a car crash or multi-vehicle pile-up on the motorway somewhere in England, and all the cars and vehicles there were. Many of them were just mangled mess and bodies, and you can imagine all the horror if you came across something like that. And a lady who was driving behind and avoided this mangled mess pulled into the side, and she thought, well, what can I do to help? And so she started to pray for the people in the mangled, horrific situation. And she just continued praying. And then this man said, I was one of those people there who was close. Yes, so this man who should have died, he was out of his body, and he was attracted to this car from which these prayers were emanating. And he said that all these prayers gave him hope, gave him confidence, uplifted him. His body was there. In the car, he, out of his body, was listening to the prayers of this lady, and that was the experience. And he was so comforted by these prayers, he said. Then he said, years later, he said, I've spent many months, almost a year in hospital for this operation, that operation. And he said he recovered, and he wanted to find the lady that was saying these prayers. And he found her eventually, and he went to visit her, to thank her so much for the comfort that he received from her prayers. And you can imagine now the man going to this lady's door, knocking on the door, the lady answering, and him saying to her, do you remember saying prayers for this pile-up of bodies and fragmented metal and God knows what else? Some years ago, I was in that pile-up there. And she said, yes, I remember. And he said, well, you said prayers for us. And she said, yes. And he said, well, I've just come to thank you for all the comfort and the hope and the confidence that you gave me, because I heard you saying those prayers. And she was astounded. She said, well, how did you know it was me? How did you find me? How did you come across me? He said, well, when I was out of the body, he said, I saw your registration plate number, and he said I remembered it, and I traced your address through that. What an experience, actually. So many people with these out-of-body experiences, they have their tales to tell, and it is a wonderful indication that the soul will go on when the body ceases to exist. And it's becoming more and more common, these type of experiences, out-of-body experiences itself. Now, what I'd like to get back to is this concept of progress, because, we're used to thinking in terms of progress when we're children, when we're going through school, We go from one standard to another, from one form to another, from one level to another as we're progressing in our education. And we have indications of whether we've done well or not through the examinations that we have. And then education, formal education stops. Perhaps we give up school education when we're 16 or 18, or we go on to university. And then after the formal education, then the concept of making progress is not there so much. It may mutate into, well, I'm making progress in my work or my hobbies and so on, and becoming better at this and better at that and so on. But the general understanding that progress can be made internally is not there. There's very little understanding in a secular society that we can progress spiritually, that we're here really to make spiritual progress. And if we don't make spiritual progress, then we are stagnating. We're like a pool, a stagnant pool, which is, it produces all manner of things which are not helpful or healthy for the body. Similarly, if we're not progressing spiritually, we're producing all manner of things which are not helpful for the development of the soul. The soul has to be involved in a process of getting closer and closer to our Maker. In other words, to become more and more perfect like our Heavenly Father is perfect. And that means focusing on qualities and characteristics which are heavenly, which are spiritual, which are sanctified, which are necessary for our own happiness and necessary for the happiness of the human race. We have to develop, for instance, on patience. We have to develop our patience. We have to develop forgiveness. We have to develop wisdom, loving kindness, all these wonderful qualities, hope, forbearance. We have to be resigned to things in life. There's a saying in the Bahá'í writings, which I find I'm thinking about more and more as I get older. We have to have radiant acquiescence. We have to submit to things that we can't alter and realize that these are here for our perfecting as well. Even the tremendous sufferings that we go through are not without reason. They're here for our perfecting. And yet we go through life, I was a teacher in school for many years, most of my adult life. I was a teacher in secondary education. I taught maths, I taught science, I taught design, crafts and technology. I went on to teach a variety of subjects over the many years, but never once have I heard any teacher going into these qualities of, it's so important to be wise, it's so important to be kind and to have unconditional love. There were some elements of that with the assemblies, the religious assemblies we had, but even those stopped after a number of years. But when we think about it, isn't it better to be wise than to be very well educated? If we have the two, that's light upon light, as we can say. But a wise person is benefit to the human race. An unwise person, no matter how well educated they are, is going to be of some distraction to our happiness. It's going to be a blight on our happiness. So developing wisdom, developing loving kindness, developing forgiveness and so on. Patience is so important. It says, I believe, in the Quran again, it says, verily we will increase the reward of those who are patient. But patience is a very, very important one to develop, of which there is more profound consequences coming back to us if we are patient. We must be patient as our Lord is patient, Baha'u'llah says.